Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, warshippers of all ages, welcome to YouTube. My name is SeaRaptor, and today we're bringing you a first look at Tier 10 German submarine U-2501. Now remember that we are looking at this on the test server. I can actually show you gameplay. There may be some of that coming later. I'm filming this video kind of early in the session because I want to make sure I get it captured, all right? Submarines have been in testing for a while, but more than a year now, but the only submarines we've ever been allowed to look at and play and touch on the live server have been the middle tier submarines, which was Cachalot in the US. I believe it's like it's U-58 or U-62 or something like this in the German tree, and there was a Russian submarine whose name escaped me. That's it. That's all we've ever seen is the Tier 6 subs, and done. However, today on test server, this is filming this on Saturday. This is like the 12th of June, I believe, that they have opened things up and we're able to test top tier submarines. It's the first time we actually get to have a look at top tier submarines, so we're going to do some of that. So let's root around and just talk about what's here. Because there's a lot going on here, kids. There's a lot of mechanics to understand as you get into submarines. Survivability. At the moment, 13,400 hit points, because that seems to be where high-tier submarines have kind of settled. USS Balao over in the American tech tree has the exact same health pool at Tier 10. The German U-boats that operate in the Atlantic, especially the ones that you see working up the tech tree, tend to be smaller. A normal German U-boat was in around, anywhere from 600 to 900 tons, depending on what era you were in and the U-boat in question. The American fleet boats, designed for operations in the Pacific, of course, generally were in the 1,200 plus ton range. So when you go back and you look at the mid-tier boats, and maybe I'll do a little video on those if they open that session up again. The German submarines in the middle tiers have less health than the American ones because the American ones are just bigger. It makes sense, right? Here at Tier 10, they are at the same at the moment. Armor layout doesn't really matter. You don't have any armor. You're a submarine. Your armor is your stealth. Your armor is the ocean. Don't ever ask about submarine armor. It should basically be meaningless. Concealment. Now, this is where things start to get interesting. The way the mechanics of submarines are being tested right now, you will spend a non-zero amount of your match on the surface, okay? Essentially, you only want to spend time submerged when you are actively trying to do torpedo runs or trying to avoid detection. Again, historically accurate, right? Like a submarine in this era would transit to and from its patrol zone on the surface, would spend its time on the surface during the day recharging its batteries, and we'll talk more about batteries in a minute. So the surface detection of these submarines, you see here 5.6, it's not going to be that amazing, right? Not going to be that amazing. Now, we'll go look at commander skills. There is no concealment expert in this tree, right? So you cannot lower this number, and if I go back and look at level 5 upgrades, I am not allowed to take concealment modification. So this is it, right? What you see is what you get when it comes to submarine detection. The printed number is the number. It cannot be modified. I don't even think can you put, let's see, if I put camo on it, will it lower the number? It will. Camo is the only thing that will lower this number. You'll get a very, very, very small bonus. That's it. So just keep that in mind when you're looking at submarine detection. It's basically what you see, okay? 1.8 detection on by air. That's actually really important, guys. The German submarines, we were talking about this on stream last night when I was playing the mid-tier subs on the test server. The German submarines have so far have among the smallest surface detections of the submarines that we've seen. And that's really important because planes are fast, and if you don't give them much reaction time to you, they have fewer opportunities to shoot at you with their goofball rockets, and right here is a perfect example. I think maybe Graf Zeppelin, maybe Audacious are some of the only ships that might be able to get a rocket strike on you with this kind of lead time. They simply cannot push the button and get the rockets into the reticle in the time that it takes the planes to literally overfly you. Now, that's not to say that you can't get struck by rockets. If you're spotted by somebody else, those rockets become an immense threat because he has all the time in the world to line up the attack. But if it's just a carrier out looking for you, this number's low enough that you can play games with him almost like you were a destroyer, right? You just kind of try and manage your angle and go from there. Sonar and torpedoes. So let's talk about this. At the moment, one of the big differences between the German and the American tech branches, which are the only ones we have access to, are their sonar. The German sonar reloads quicker, but doesn't stick to the enemy ship as long. If you see videos of submarine mechanics, sonar is like your main quote-unquote kind of weapon. It's what you're quote-unquote firing the most. You send a sonar ping out an enemy ship. If you hit him, it sticks. Like you'll see a section of the enemy ship highlighted that shows, hey, you landed your sonar ping. You've got a sonar lock on him, for lack of a better word. All right. So the German ones come back up faster and don't last as long, and they tend to have shorter ranges at the moment than the American ones. So you can see all that info here. Torpedo tubes. These should be, we've got 6. It looks like there are 6 in the bow. That should be it. Of course, we can't duck below the surface. Yep, don't see any in the stern. So the 2500 series U-boats did away with the stern tubes. A typical U-boat of the normal U-boat you find most of the war is 4 bow tubes and a single stern tube. Typical American boat is 6 bow tubes and usually at least 4 stern tubes for the Gattos and Balaus. Sometimes only 2, depends on which one you're talking about. But here, the German torpedoes all focused forward. You see their 85-second reload time. That's noteworthy. That's a pretty long reload time. We were talking about this last night on stream, that the American torpedoes reload significantly faster and even hit harder, right? You see there the German torpedoes with the same range as your sonar. Literally, the sonar range seems to always match your torpedo range. 64 knots, 5800 alpha, and a 1.7 detection. You can see these coming, right? These are not like super mega ultra stealthy torpedoes. You can see them coming, but because of the way the mechanics work with the homing torpedoes and everything, sometimes you can't always dodge them. Sometimes you can, but sometimes you can't. So 6 bow tubes here on U-2501 for her main armament. Now she does these. I don't know if these are considered deck guns or AA guns, but they aren't listed on her main armament. But basically, they're treating deck guns on submarines now as secondary weapons. So if you find yourself on the surface as in a submarine in a gunfight, A, you're screwed. B, you don't get to control your guns. Any deck guns you have on the ship are considered secondary weapons and will just pop off periodically, and cross your fingers. We will eventually see submarines getting secondary kills. It'll be meme-tacular. We'll all have a laugh and get on with our lives. Battery charge. Now, right now in port, you see a number. This number does not seem to translate to anything in-game, and the various skills and upgrades that would help modify your battery, your submerged duration, do not impact this number. So, of the two submarines at Tier 10, U-2501 has the higher of the 2 battery charges, which makes sense. If memory serves, the 2500 series U-boats would have been Germany's most advanced unterseeboats and had great battery reserves, right? In general, the German battery reserves, and we were talking about this again, looking at the Tier 6 ships last night, tend to be longer. When I played whatever the mid-tier one last night was on stream, I could get the submerged time to almost 6 minutes. Now, previous iterations of submarine testing, you could recharge your batteries. Right now, you can't. So your submerged duration is a fixed number that you have to manage over the course of a match. 6 minutes in a 20-minute game is actually pretty respectable, right? Like, that basically means you can spend basically a third of your time submerged. That's actually kind of nice. And there are some games that you can play, some consumables, some commander skills that you can mess around with that will help you increase the duration of that number, make it burn, use that battery up slower than you would otherwise, okay? Consumables also impact this. You'll see this when we get over the American tree. They have some consumables that allow them to manage their batteries better. The German consumables don't have that. But battery charge right now, of the two, 2501 has a much higher battery charge than Belau. Maneuverability. This is surface maneuverability. 31 knots on the surface. Yowza. Yowza. That's crazy. I don't think this is historical. I don't know much about the U-2500. So my belief is that this is not historical. I'm sure somebody in the comments will tell me one way or the other. But 31 knots on the surface, 770 meter turning circle, and a 6.8 rudder shift time. So this is like kind of almost destroyer speed and kind of like destroyer detection, right? Like this is almost Shimakaze detection. This is not Shimakaze handling, right? So these ships don't handle all that amazing, and it does take them time to dive, okay? So let's look at the underwater maneuvering, and we'll talk about this. 24 knots submerged. That is amazing. But this is Tier 10, okay? The middle tier ships that we were derping around with last night were struggling to reach 10 knots submerged. So these numbers are absolutely ahistorical. This is definitely a kind of a nod to the fact that this is an arcade game. We got to balance it somehow. 24 knots submerged is nuts. Consider, gentlemen, ladies, U-2501 fully submerged can keep pace with a Tier 10 battleship in the game. That's right, I'm looking at you, USS Vermont. I'm looking at you. 23.9 second diving plane shift time. I believe the intent of this number is to give you a feel for how long it takes the ship to dive. I do not believe that this is a second for second translation in how long it takes the ship to dive. I won't pretend. I don't really know. I haven't done enough testing yet. Okay, but I do know it does take time to dive. Diving is not an instantaneous operation. From the time that you push the C button, which is basically your way of telling the UI, hey, I want off the surface, I want to get down to periscope depth, there is a spin-up time and so on that it takes time to dive. The Germans have a consumable that can speed up that time, and I'll show you that in just a minute. And then you see there your maximum kind of changing speed in between. So that's just kind of looking statistically. Now let's go back and look at consumables. You're going to see a lot of blank icons in here, so they're still working on all of that. So you obviously have DCP. Shipping World Warships, you get DCP. Congratulations. The first one is hydrophone. Now, this is a submarine-only consumable. When you are submerged in a submarine, the game seems to not render surface ships for you, okay? You don't know where the surface ships are. They don't really, if you go deep enough, they don't know where you are either. But if you want to try and figure it out, you use this consumable. You see there, it's got a 90-second reload time on a 30-second action time. You're going to get a couple of pings that will show you the kind of rough outline of ships on the surface. This does not provide perfect spotting. This gives you kind of a, okay, there's a ship there sort of thing. I haven't actually tried this yet. I've had people trying to explain this to me. But that basically, once you're submerged, you have very, very limited sight distance about knowing where enemy ships are. You can actually, in this game, because this happened to me on the test server, you can actually die to depth charges from a destroyer that you never even knew was there. Okay? So that's something to keep in mind. The German kind of tech tree nation unique consumable is fast diving planes. You see there, this is essentially a crash dive button. Of course, historically in this era, submarines were terrified of aircraft because aircraft meant death. In World of Warships, aircraft continue to mean death. I've seen what happens to submarines that sit on the surface and take rocket attacks all day. And the new battleship ASW patrol consumable can actually do some impact. So these diving planes allow a German submarine to crash dive. Essentially, you push this button and you get from the surface down into the water and deeper much quicker than you would without it. And you've got a couple of the charges of that base. Equipment-wise, I don't want to get too much into this, but you will start to see some submarine-specific equipment here. There's some sonar modifications. You've got some modifications you can do to your dive capacity, how long you can stay submerged. There's another one up here at Tier 6 that's just a straight-up 20% buff to your dive capacity. This right now is obviously going to be the default for most high-tier submarines. We'll do more looking at this later. This is obviously all still in testing. They don't even have icons in for them yet, okay? So anyway, guys, that's kind of a sense of where we're at with U-2501, the high end of the German submarine tree, which I find really interesting. So far, we'll do another video on mechanics later. I just kind of wanted to focus and kind of give you a sense of what this ship does, what she does well, what she might not do well, and we'll compare and contrast her to USS Palau in a separate video, okay? Anyway, guys, wash your hands, be safe, and I'll catch you next time.